Hello and welcome back everybody to the Foodbuild factory, where today we're going to take a look at the Atom Worshipper. That's the guy you can see on screen right now. And as always, I'm going to show you some gameplay in the first part of the video, and in the second part of the video we're going to take a look at the perks, mutations, equipment and everything else. Now, what this build is going to be about, it's a hybrid between gunslinger as well as um, melee. To be more precise, gunslinger and gladiator, so we are using a sacrificial machete, so just so you know. And overall, I gotta say, this build here was a bit of a passion project from me, simply because I did want to make use of the Assaultron head. Now, some of you may recall this isn't the first video I'm going to make about the Assaultron head. I did one earlier. The way I used the Assaultron head when I did that, I was using an instigating Assaultron head and stealth. Now, you immediately jumped out of stealth and back into danger, but we were using a Chinese stealth suit just to regain stealth every now and then. Now, this process worked, however, it was a bit tedious, and now I wanted to get back into it, and this time my approach was a bit different. Now, the idea came to me with one of Angry Turtle's videos, where he just shown off the good synergy between the Ghoulish perk that lets you heal your health with radiation damage taken, and I just have to re-equip this here, and the What Rats perk that removes radiation over time. Now, this means you can make a very tanky character. The first enemies we're killing here are ghouls, so those give us radiation when they are attacking us, so they are healing us anyways. But also the weapon itself, the Assaultron head, unless you use a legacy weapon, it will heal, it will irradiate yourself, which means that it will heal ourselves. Now, this build is definitely going to be a little bit of an oddity, meaning you're kind of borrowing some features of low health builds, of bloodied builds, but on the other hand, you're basically a high health build. So, oftentimes when fights go on, you will find yourself somewhere in the middle. Now, the reason why I wanted to do it that way is simply because I thought about the flaws and the pros and cons of the Assaultron head. Now, the Assaultron head is very buggy in a way. First and foremost, you can't really use VATS because no matter what you're doing in VATS, you're just not going to do a whole lot of damage. You're basically, as far as I can tell, always just doing... What do we have there? Oh, a sheep squatch. That's going to be a bit of a tough fight, but I guess we can do it. Anyways, back to the topic. So, let's try to get a headshot here. And, well, what's going to happen with the Assaultron and VATS is that no matter how much you charge your weapon, it seems that only the first charge will do damage. But in free aim, it works kinda well, to a certain degree. To a certain degree, I do mean that if you're doing too much damage, this can happen with a bloodied version, or most likely going to happen with a quad version if you fully charge that. And yeah, your enemy's health will just rubber band. So, by the way, don't worry if this is going to take a little bit. We won't take on a Scorch piece for that. So I think the Sheep Squatch will be a very good contender here to show off how fights against tankier enemies go. Now, as you can see here, the benefit about this build here is that we just eliminated basically the problem from the weapon that we need to recharge by simply making the time we recharge in pretty much irrelevant. Because why is it important to kill enemies fast? Now, obviously it can be important just because you want to have things done in a fast way. If that's your case, well, this build here won't help you. The other big reason why you want to kill enemies fast rather than slow is simply because, yeah, all the time you take in order to kill an enemy is time where you can take damage. And getting damaged is, yeah, just bad because you have to use healing items and so on. Now, this is something that just won't be the case in this situation here, because we're very tanky. Now, first and foremost, we do have pretty high endurance, which means that we can take quite some hits anyways, but more than that, we also have the ability to heal our health constantly. Now, as I said, with longer fights, if fights drag on a little bit, this means we will end up a little bit in a situation where we do have kind of 50% of our health, and we will slowly irradiate ourselves more and more. But as you can see here, the fight with the Sheep Squatch, now, he wasn't really concentrating on us so far, but still, we did get some hits in here and there, and we barely lost any health. The bit of health we do lose, we can easily regain, and our damage is good. Now, the synergy comes in when if fights are harder, meaning that we will go down with our health. That also means we will get more damage, simply because we're doing similar things to a low health build, meaning adrenal reaction and so on. And yeah, everything else, well, it just works out quite well. Now, as I said, you're not going to break any DPS records with this build. It's a slower paced build, but on the other hand, it's very laid back. You really don't have to worry a whole lot. I was playing with this build for quite a while now, and what I found is that in all the time, I think I died twice or something, and that was just because I was just doing mistakes and just getting really swarmed by gutsies, for example. Those can be a bit of a pain. And, well, since here are mole rats, by the way, this is a situation... Well, not another Soltron head, I have 2 of these. This is what I'm looking for, a machete. And this is what we're carrying. I meant that we are a hybrid build between Gladiator and the Soltron head. And what we are using the Gladiator perks for is basically just pest control. Now, for example, the ghouls, they are relatively squishy. We could have taken on them with the machete, or yeah, as I said, mole rats. Another good thing is sting wings, because you don't really use that, so anything that's flying, sting wings or bloat flies, such enemies you will take on with your sword, simply because it's a bit faster and easier. But everything that's a bit more of a danger, you can just go back to your Soltron head. The Soltron head is the main damage dealer in this build here. As I said, the machete is just a pest control weapon, and works kinda well here. Now, I think it's time to talk a little bit about the optics of the build. Here we have some ghouls. I will slay those with the machete just to show that off. And the basis for this build here was pretty much I wanted to do something, since I was working with radiation so much. I wanted to base my build up on the Children of Adam that are prominent in other games here in the franchise, but it wouldn't really make a whole lot of sense. Now, it's not that my builds always have to be law friendly or anything, but I felt like it doesn't really have to be a straight up Children of Adam build. Thing is, we're just an Atom worshipper. This idea seems to be nothing too wild. After all, the Children of Atom came up with it. And just out of curiosity here, I want to see where... there you are. So, another thing you saw here, basically what I learned is that you don't have to charge the Soltron head completely. In almost all situations, unless you're fighting boss type enemies or bosses like Scorch Beast or the Sheep Squatch we were taking on, 3 charges are enough. Now, on paper, okay, here we see when we're fighting Gutsies, we probably want to have more than that. You see, the thing is that on paper, every charge of the weapon gives you like 1 times more the base damage. However, the thing that I've noticed is that that's not exactly the case, because your armor penetration increases with more damage dealt. So the difference between 2 and 3 charges is more than just 1 more base damage, if that makes sense. Okay, where are you? Here you are. And as you can see, even those ballistic gutsies, while they do initially seem like they can damage us, we are pretty... we don't have to worry a whole lot now. There's no assault on here, but I think that should be fine. Um, anyways, yeah, back to the topic. We can heal off quite easily. Um, there's no reason to worry if you're falling below 50% health or something. Like, you really never need a stim pack or anything. And as you can see here, since I'm not using any drugs, any chems or aid items, I just included the mutation, the healing factor mutation. So it's absolutely no problem if we're getting down with our health during fights, because after the fight, both our radiation and our health will solve themselves over time. And as I said, the big thing here is the reload time. That's the big downside of the weapon. Is just mitigated more or less by the simple fact that, yeah, we're tanky. So one thing should be pretty clear: you can use the base of this build here with pretty much every weapon, because we are tanky as we are. The bit of health regeneration that comes from irradiating ourselves with the weapon isn't essential by any means, so you can definitely use other weapons. I mean, after all, we're doing that a little bit. Let's just do that. So here you can see, while we are not dealing a whole lot of damage with our weapon, the swing speed is quite fast, and therefore we don't have a problem. Now, could you stop rolling, please? I just here for the screws, basically. So that's it. We're now going to fast travel to Huntersville, as we do. We will take on some super mutants. Now, super mutants are one of these kind of middle ground enemies that are not really boss type enemies, but they can be a little bit of a pain. And usually for those, I really just use the Assaultron head. Those are enemies I wouldn't really take on with the machete. Not because you couldn't. You could definitely quite easily survive the situation. The main reason here is basically just that, yeah, you can heal yourself with a Assaultron head. Now, as you saw here, by the way, 3 charges yet again are basically the best you can do. More is unnecessary. Sometimes if you are fighting over longer range, you could probably need more than 3 charges. However, long range isn't really a thing here. Now, I want to show that off, but the weapon isn't super precise, and over long range comes a little bit of a problem. But yeah, after all, we're built to tank damage, so it doesn't really, you don't really need to stay hidden or stay at range. You can just stand there and face enemies. It's quite easy. It's definitely one of the most simple gunslingers I've played so far. Like, you really don't have to worry about anything. Now, on this occasion, we do have a level 100 deadly super mutant hound, and yeah, then we miss a shot. Now, this can be a little bit of a problem if we do miss a shot, but yeah, goes down in 1 shot. I think at the time we were at 5 charges, and this here, yeah, this is basically the only thing that can damage you. High DPS enemies. However, yeah, you can just take on those beforehand. So this was a little bit of my behavior, because yeah, you should just take out those super mutants with miniguns and you're fine. The others, as you can see here, they're basically no threat whatsoever. As you see here, basically back to full health. On this occasion I charged 4 shots, which wasn't meant. 3 should still be enough, but maybe we can use a little bit more range. Now, the hipfire accuracy on this thing is bad. You should always aim down sights. That's just, well, it's a simple fact, but I think it doesn't really hurt. Also gives us a little bit of a gunslinger feeling to actually aim down sights for once. And it's a little bit of a fresh pace to not use VETs on a gunslinger. Now, by all means, this isn't the real classic gunslinger to begin with, but I still like how the whole character turned out to be. Now, in terms of the weapon, I mean, I will show it off later anyways, but it's something I usually do. I talk a little bit about the weapon itself. Now, we do have an anti-armor swing speed machete. The anti-armor effect on this occasion isn't really wasted for the simple reason that I did not use Incisor because, as I said, we do have the anti-armor effect on our weapon, meaning that we can penetrate armor quite well, and we use it for pests mostly anyways. So that means that we're mostly not taking on highly targets with high resistances, and therefore it's enough. And we do have a little bit more room for other perks that we need, mainly blocker here for being tanky. Now this guy here could have been a problem, but we seen him relatively early on, and losing about, what was it, 1/3 of our health, not even. Yeah, that's not a problem. That's something we want to see throughout our gameplay here. Now here, okay, this is a guy with a switchblade, so probably not really a threat, but yeah. Yes, and about the assault run head, this is a bit more important here because obviously for the melee weapon, go whatever you like. You can also invest into slugger weapons, meaning two-handed weapons rather than the one-handed ones. I just wanted to make use out of the machete for once, and I thought it was quite fitting here with the sacrificial blade modification that looks kind of cool and fits this kind of yeah, cultist, not really cultist, but you know what I'm talking about, vibes that we're going for here. And the Assaultron head, what I'm using here is a two-shot version. Now, as you can imagine, making the second video at the time about Assaultron heads, I used a fair whack of them, and since the weapon is so buggy, it really took me a while to find out what works on this weapon and what not. Now, usually I am really not a big fan of the two-shot effect. I don't like it much. However, on the Assaultron head, I found that this is probably one of the best effects you can get, simply because the thing that usually makes the two-shot effect a bit bad, in my opinion, is that you're splitting your damage between two projectiles, meaning that you're having a harder time to penetrate armor with each projectile, on top of being less accurate and so on. Now the accuracy still is a little bit of a problem, however, as I said earlier, we are not meant for ranged combat, so that's not really a problem. And splitting the damage on this occasion actually does us more good than harm. Because, as I said, one prominent bug with the Soltron head is basically that it can do so much damage that, by the way, another nice thing we can show off here, nuke mines. They completely heal us and do nice damage. They're good for pest control or for situations where, for example, at the White Spring Golf Course, don't worry, the radiation doesn't heal the ghouls. It's enough to kill them. It works very well against them. So that's something to keep in mind. They can't damage us because every damage they do, they immediately heal off. And yeah, back to the topic of the two-shot effect. What you will see is that splitting the damage means that rubber banding happens way less. The game basically has two easier to calculate damage numbers, I guess is what happens. I'm not completely sure. However, yeah, it definitely works out, and since we're doing very high base damage with those shots, they still penetrate armor very well. I'm guessing another quite good assault run head would be, well, instigating, as I used it earlier, or anti-armor, but I would keep away from things like junkies, bloodied, or quad especially. Quad just doesn't work at all. It's ridiculous. But yeah, I guess I'm not sure with junkies that could just be low enough damage to be useful. But yeah, bloodied also pretty bugged. So overall, that's about it. Okay, where's this coming from? Okay, we have one more level 100, and I think we're done here. See, no, we're still in danger. I want to start with looking at the mutations and so on, but I really don't want to get interrupted during the video. But yeah, I guess. Yeah, we're in caution and it's fading, so let's just get up this cliff here and we're taking a look at all the more interesting stuff. Now, I hope you did enjoy the gameplay so far. I mean, I'm not blind to the fact that this isn't any meta gameplay or anything. But I really loved how it turned out. It was really, yeah, easy and laid back approach to a gunslinger. I am still quite happy with the results, and it's a lot of fun. I can only say, give it a try. It's definitely something you can work with, and I guess the idea of irradiating yourself with your weapon and healing yourself is something people can make crazy builds about. So I'm happy to see what's coming up with this, and yeah, that's about it. Now we're going to take a look at our mutations. First, now these are a little bit all over the place, but that's not for nothing. There's a good reason here. Now, adrenal reaction is the first one here. That's very important and very obvious in my opinion because, as you saw during the gameplay, it's standard procedure for us to just lose health during fights, and even though we're not taking full advantage of the adrenal reaction mutation like a bloodied build would do, we often find ourselves at about 50% of our health, and this especially happens in situations where enemies are tougher. Now, in situations where we are not at lower health, enemies can't be so hard. So therefore this is a very nice synergy. Now bird bones on this occasion wouldn't really be necessary. I'd argue that I really would like to not have it here. However, this is one of the very few mutations I didn't necessarily need here, so I didn't bother to remove it. After all, it lowers our strength and therefore our damage with our cultist blade a little bit. Not the cultist blade, the sacrificial blade. But that's pretty much the only downside. More agility also has its uses here, but yeah, that's about it. Now, carnivore, pretty simple. You can definitely make good use out of food buffs if you really want to use your machete more or whatever melee weapon you decide to use. However, that's just a leftover, and I didn't bother to remove it. Not particularly necessary, but still good to have, simply because if you really say, okay, I'm kind of sick of using my Assaultron head, you can easily just utilize your machete more and buff it up a little bit. Electrically charged, while not very important, um, it does have a little bit of a use here. We do have the same with unstable isotope that you can see on the bottom of the list. Those are basically those mutations that if you're getting attacked by a melee enemy, they have a chance to counter-attack them. The damage isn't all that great here. I mean, unstable isotope makes a little mushroom cloud around you, which just works very well with the optics of the build. But damaging the enemies around you has the niche little use that tenderizer works for us when we are attacking them in close proximity, which otherwise isn't a thing we're really utilizing all that much with our Assaultron head. But that's about it. They're not important, nice to have, but yeah, you don't really need them. Healing factor, I briefly touched upon it during the video. We're not really using any chems here. Usually the main negative to this mutation is that stimpaks aren't as useful, but as you saw during the whole video, I think we used one stimpak, and that's about it. You're basically not using stimpaks a whole lot, and even if you want to, you can just put something like irradiated food or spoiled meat or something in your quick menu and use that to heal yourself, because after all, there's a lot of consumables that do heal you now. Um, Toxic goo from Westtech, where we're standing, would work perfectly well here. Um, Next on the list is marsupial. More jump height, more carry weight. Not a lot to talk about here. It's pretty standard. Scaly skin, quite simple. We don't use a whole lot of AP on this build. We don't use VETs. We don't use sneak. Well, we don't need AP for sneak, but you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, we don't use VETs. That's basically it. No need for AP, and 50 isn't all that much anyways, but a little bit more tankiness comes in handy. And I will soon show you. I think all of the armor is broken, by the way. This is basically a berserker build at this point, but except for some of the perks and mutations that we have that provide us with some damage and energy resistance. Speed Demon, I mean, I'm not having to talk a lot about this, similar to the latest build with the Single action revolver, yeah, we're reloading all of the time, and reloading faster can be quite beneficial in this situation. Last but not least, we do have twisted muscles here. This was a little bit of a compromise. In a perfect world, the negative gun accuracy really hurts us a little bit because having a two-shot weapon already hinders our gun accuracy quite a lot. But we have one perk that helps us, and as you saw during the video, as long as we keep our distance to from low to medium, this isn't a problem at all. Obviously, it would be nice to have more accuracy, however, it's not necessary in my opinion. And the extra melee damage and chance to cripple that comes with it, yeah, that's definitely more beneficial than the gun accuracy that hurts us, so I decided to keep Twisted Muscles on this character. That's about it for the mutations. As you can see here, quite some things going on, but yeah, not a whole lot intriguing, I'd like to say. Pretty straightforward here. Going on, these are the nuke mines that I've shown you briefly. They aren't really the best thing against super mutants, I just failed to show them off. One thing I like to do is just go around the golf club, gather all the ghouls together. They don't really hurt you all that much, so you can just stand there, wait till they group up, and you can clear the basically the whole golf course, the widespread golf course, with 2 to 3 nuke mines. It's fun, standing there in the middle, but that's about it. And the weapon we are using throughout the video was, well, I switched, but actually I'm using this one here most of the time, a two-shot version with 10% extra damage while aiming. We're always aiming down sights because the hip fire accuracy is so bad, so I found that this one here worked quite well, but as I see here, especially against the super mutants here, we definitely use this one here, two-shot with bashing damage. So as you can see, you don't really need anything. The important part here, in my opinion, is the two-shot effect. Sorry, and yeah, Vet's hit chance wouldn't do a whole lot. Limb damage could be cool, but we're trying to kill stuff quickly. In terms of secondary effects, I'm really not sure what could be good here. And last effect, yeah, faster reload, that would be nice. But other than that, it's pretty simple. You just need a two-shot assault on head, and that's it, basically. And as for our weapon here, this was an anti-armor swing speed machete with the sacrificial blade mod, giving it a little bit of poison damage, which works well with the high swing speed. And overall, the damage isn't all that impressive, but you saw, combined with the high swing speed and our tankiness, it's definitely a useful tool in a lot of situations when you don't have to or don't want to use your assault head. That's about it. In terms of our armor, okay, not all of them are broken, but 3 pieces are broken, 2 are intact. I'm using 3 bolstering pieces here. Bolstering AP refresh, bolstering agility sentinel, bolstering radiation resistance sneak, which we don't use. Another one with sneak, but this time unyielding and endurance. A little bit more endurance is nice. We have more endurance on this one as well. So a little bit of a mix. In a perfect world, now the perfect armor set for this build, in my opinion, would be a full set of bolstering armor, simply because we want to be in the middle of our health a little bit, and once we go down with our health, we automatically gain tankiness, and as a secondary effect, endurance works very well. After all, a lot of our tankiness from this in this build comes from endurance, having high endurance, so AP refresh not really necessary on this occasion, and Sentinel would be cool as the last effect. So yeah, full set of bolstering, Sentinel, endurance, whatever, Secret Service armor or whatever. You get the point here. Everything that works for a low health build works quite well. Now, unyielding on this occasion, not as useful as usual, because a lot of the benefits that come with unyielding armor we don't really utilize. High perception, high agility for good vets, and high luck for good vets usage. Not really a concern for us since we're not using vets. Now, what would be nice is the extra strength that comes from the unyielding armor when it comes to our melee weapon. However, as you saw, we're not that far down with radiation usually, so the the toughest thing I had was like half of my HP bar being radiated. So yeah, I think bolstering is nice here. It works nice. I do like to have a use for bolstering because almost always, if I'm using a low health build, I rather prefer unyielding, and seeing a use for bolstering is nice for once. But overall, not all that impressive. Nothing crazy here. I didn't even bother to modify all of the the armor pieces. Really not that important on this occasion. And let's go on to our perks here. Now, in strength, you see we have 15 strength. It's even a bit higher with legendary perks, but this is basically completely optional. The only thing that really adds to the build here is blocker, simply because we want to be quite tanky, and therefore blocker is always a nice option. The rest here we filled with 3 times the gladiator perks maxed out, and the martial artist perk. So faster swing speed and more damage with our gladiator weapon. As I said, usually you'd like to have incisor, but using an anti-armor melee weapon kind of mitigates that, and since we're using the machete mostly to fight lower level enemies or ghouls or something like that, yeah, you don't really need incisor. Obviously, if you feel tanky enough, you can ditch out blocker and use incisor. As I said, you can also use other weapons if you want to go with a super sledge or something, or just switch out all the gladiator perks with slugger and you're fine. Um, if you don't want to use any melee weapon at all, this was the initial plan for me. I just wanted to use the situation or the chance I had to make a hybrid that kind of works well. You can also double down on tanking by just adding barbarian and so on and carry weight perks. So this could really be a very utility heavy build. Anyways, next on our list here, we do have Perception, which is a 3. We're not really utilizing the base stat of Perception in any ways. I have it at 3 here for Crack Shot. This is the perk I was referring to because, as I said, we're aiming down sights quite often, and this helps us, give us more accuracy. That's the main reason we're taking Crack Shot here. Um, the better range isn't really all that great. We don't utilize that all that much. It's really more about the better accuracy, and the difference is quite good. So trust me on that. I mean, I could show it off, but yeah, no reason to lie here. Um, I found that even without crack shot, it worked well most of the time. However, um, yeah, the mid-range enemies, sometimes their shots were just missing or just one of them hit, and that was quite tedious. So Crackshot is here, and fun fact, Crackshot is actually the only perk that we have that actually benefits our Assaultron head. Other than that, the Assaultron head is just plain and standard legendary Assaultron head with no damage perks or whatever, for those of you who already took a little bit of a look to the right side of the screen. Anyways, next and probably most important stat for this here build is Endurance at 14 with Life Giver, more health points. Ghoulish, this is the centerpiece of the build here. Radiation now regenerates even more health, more of your lost health. Not a lot to talk about. I mean, you saw it. This was basically the purpose of the whole video, was to show this off. Adamantium Skeleton, quite simple. If we don't have Adamantium Skeleton, we get crippled a lot, and since we're always in the middle of the fight, we're not stealthy, we're not using any legendary pieces here. So a nice benefit of this build here is that you don't really have to use Stimpaks. You can use them to sell them or transfer them to another character. And if you then need a Stimpak to heal your crippled limbs every 2 minutes, that kind of defeats the purpose. So Adamantium Skeleton here. Fireproof, quite straightforward. We want to be tanky. Now with this high endurance, probably not a whole lot of enemies around or situations around where we could be one-shot by any explosives, but it's still nice to have. Also, it makes it more possible to just use those nuke mines that I said earlier. You can just use other mines as well. I just went for the nuke mines for a simple reason that it fits the character quite well, and yeah, pretty easy here. And lastly, we do have Radical, which increases our strength if we have radiation. Not particularly necessary, but on the other hand, yeah, we are constantly irradiating ourselves a little bit, so why not use it? It's just 1 perk point, pretty good on this occasion. We do use melee sometimes, so yeah, similar effect to unyielding, just unyielding in a lower way. Charisma, we do have rank 4, Lone Wanderer, pretty straightforward. Yeah, tank more damage, gain AP refresh, nothing out of the ordinary here. I'd argue that you easily get away without Lone Wanderer, so you could use Tenderizer, would benefit quite well from our mutations, from electrically charged and unstable isotope, as I said earlier. However, didn't feel really necessary and a bit wasted on this occasion, so I went for the classic and standard Lone Wanderer rank 4. So, not a lot to talk about here. Intelligence is very low. This is a little bit of a downside to the character, so I know a lot of people don't really like that. However, keep in mind, as I said earlier, strength is completely optional. You can do the whole game with the Assaultron head. There shouldn't be a problem here. So you can just use strength to raise your intelligence or perception or whatever you like. So that's an option. I just went down to 3 and used Nerd Rage here. Not that we often get into a situation where Nerd Rage is active, but after all, we're playing a lot with our health pool here, so having a little bit of a safety net is nice. And also, since this build is so careless, as I said, um, after a while you really start to not really look at your HP bar all that much. Because, yeah, very rarely there happens something, and yeah, sometimes it does though, as you saw with the super mutant with the minigun, and on this occasion, Nerd Rage can be kind of a panic switch, where you get a visual indication on the screen that, yeah, this time maybe you should use a Stimpack. So that's there here. There's nothing really neat. Now the weapon has a bit of a bad condition, so you could make an argument for using rank 3 um, of gunsmith. Maybe you fear that you can't modify your weapons or something, but that's another thing. You don't need intelligence to modify anything here. You need 3 intelligence to use armorer in order to mod your armor, but that's basically it. The assault head doesn't have any modifications, and for the machete that we're using, the only mod we're using is the sacrificial blade mod, and that can be bought very easily, very cheap from all the radar vendors across the map, meaning that once you have the modification box that you bought for, I think it's 110 caps, you don't need any makeshift warrior perks or something. So yeah, this build very simple in that regard. On to agility, which is at 14, not necessarily because we need it, but well, we don't need it elsewhere. We do have through hiker here. This would be the first thing I would ditch out. It's just there because there's nothing really else we can utilize here. And yeah, I like to carry some nuka quantums and such on this occasion, but you could switch that out with action boy, for example. You can use a sneak if you really feel like it, but another thing you could do is swap 3 of those perks for perception, or what you could ultimately do is increase your damage a little bit by just using rank 1 of each of the gunslinger perks. This is something I initially thought about doing, but on the other hand, you saw the Assaultron head is quite powerful. There's not a whole lot of reasons to actually use damage perks on this occasion, because as I said, after a certain point you're doing too much damage with the weapon, and then we're back at being bugged again. So why not take it as it is? Works quite well. Makes it a super good sidearm in my opinion. So yeah, that's that. White Knight, pretty simple. Even though we are quite tanky with a lot of broken armor at the moment, you can imagine this build can be very tanky if you throw in good armor, like good Secret Service armor or anything. And being shot all the time, White Knight prevents you from having to repair your stuff all the time. And if you do, it's cheaper. So might as well have it here. Then we have Adrenaline at rank 5. Now, as I said, we're not breaking any DPS records. However, what this allows you to do is basically, for example, if you are running the White Spring course or West Tech here, after a while where you start off with charging your weapon 3 times and one-shotting stuff, after a while you're having like 70% health or something, so adrenal reaction kicks in a little bit, and then adrenaline stacks up and about half the dungeon, and you basically can two-shot most things, especially the level 60 and 75 super mutants. So there's a nice little synergy there. You don't need it though, so that's a bit of a personal preference. And lastly, we do have Dodgy, which It is a good perk. I still don't like to use it a lot when I'm using vets, even though you can get away with it. But on this occasion, there is really nothing that speaks against dodgy. We have pretty fast action point refresh, so having no action points after a fight isn't a real big concern. And during a fight, there's nothing we're needing action points for actually. So action points can directly be converted into tankiness, which is kind of good for our character here. The only thing where it could be useful is if you're really using your machete and want to do a lot of power attacks, but as I said earlier, the machete is more of a backup weapon, which seems a bit odd looking at the perks, me saying that the weapon that is fully spec'd into, or at least nearly fully spec'd into, is the backup weapon, but that's how it is, and yeah. So you could ditch out dodgy, but I found to have no problem using it. And lastly, we do have luck here with Bloody Mass, just a little bit more base damage. This is pretty much the only thing that alters the damage of our Assaultron head here. But yeah, it doesn't hurt. Not a lot we do need in luck, so there's that. Then we do have Class Freak. So early on, when I've shown the mutations, we had the visual bug where it wasn't really presented. Like can remember, yeah, what I'm talking about was, for example, the minus 50% um, gun accuracy from the twisted muscles mutation, which in all reality is 12.5% or something like that. So yeah, keep that in mind. We do have class freak on, so all the negatives aren't all that bad. Another thing is bird bones only gives us negative 1-2 strength, so we still are at high strength. And lastly, we do have starch genes, pretty straightforward. And lastly, what we do have here is 2 perception, 2 what rats, rank 5 of legendary strength, rank 1 of legendary endurance, legendary luck, and legendary intelligence. So as you can see, um, something that I'm doing pretty often, like using 1 or 2 of the more interesting legendary perks. On this occasion, what rats, and the rest is just here to give me more room for perk points here and there. Legendary strength on this occasion doesn't give us any extra strength perk points because we have a base strength of 15. So this is all just to further increase our melee damage, because this is usually my melee character, and after all, we're carrying a melee weapon as a backup here, so isn't wasted at all, and the rest here quite low. Now, as you saw here, I'm only using rank 2 of Ward Reds, and I found that it worked out quite well. Now, I'm not gonna lie here and say that I wouldn't like to have it higher. However, I feel that at a certain point it could arguably even be counter beneficial to your build, because you're spending less time with the effects of adrenal reaction and so on. So there's that. But you can definitely improve on it. But what I want to say here is only rank 2 of what rats is enough to make this build. So you're not needing to be level 400 or something, or a very high level. So you can relatively easily get this build to work. And that's about it. Now, let's take a look at our photo gallery here. I made this here little thumbnail, which I'm pretty proud of. Looks pretty sick. By the way, because I'm seeing it here, the face paint of my guy, I tried to come up with something of a radiation symbol. I think it worked out kind of well. I was using dark green and yellow, so this is not a face paint that you can find. It's a combination of like 5 different face paints, and I was working quite long on it. I had an initial plan that worked out better, but I kind of screwed up and had to redo it, and it didn't turn out all that well, but I'm still kind of happy with it. That was a long sentence. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm really proud of it. Like, this is one of those builds that I most enjoy to record, simply because it feels so unique, and I can only advise you to really give it a shot. Try it out. Try to find your own synergies here. This is something that there are a lot of possibilities. Now, one thing I could imagine working well is the Fat Man. I'm not quite sure though if it gives off radiation damage. But another thing that's kind of cool is you could actually probably survive using a legacy radium rifle at close ranges. I might have to test it, but that would certainly be make a nice combination here. Um, Even though, yeah, probably you want to use a radium rifle at um, how should I say, at close range, out of stealth, so probably not all that necessary, but could be interesting here. Um, you can do way more with nuke mines. They are a ton of fun. Laying mines directly in front of you and see enemies around you go up is definitely fun. However, I was kind of short on screws and didn't really want to create nuke mines on another character and transfer them. That was a bit much, and yeah, during the video I easily forgot to use them anyways. But they can be a lot of fun, and after all, the main benefit of this build, in my opinion, is it has a lot of room for utility perks. Like, as I said, you can just ditch out melee and go all in with the assault grenade and basically have 3 perk points that you use for your weapon, and everything else can go whatever. And yeah, I enjoyed it. I do realize that it may seems a bit off, and maybe you don't want to utilize it because you think it's hard or tedious to manage your health or something. But it really works out to be very careless approach. And yeah, after all, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video and see you next time. Bye.